Hello again. Siqhubeka naye chapter 3 wemthethosisekelo section 23, protection of freedom of conscience or religion. A person has a right to freedom of thought, conscience or religion, except with the free consent of that person. A person shall not be hindered in the enjoyment of the freedom of conscience and of the purposes of his section of freedom of conscience includes freedom of thought and of religion, freedom to change religion or belief, and freedom to worship either alone or in a community of others. A religious community is entitled to establish and maintain places of education and to manage any places of education which that community wholly maintains, and that community may not be prevented from providing religious instructions for persons of that community in the course of any education provided at any place of education which that community wholly maintains, or in the course of any education which that community otherwise provides. Nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this section to the extent that the law in question makes provision that is reasonably required in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health, or that is reasonably required for the purpose of protecting the rights and freedoms of other persons, including the rights to observe and practice any religion or belief without the unsolicited intervention of members of any religion or belief. Kuyatichaza lo ukuthi we all have a right to ukuthi sithandaze leyo sikufunako sikhondele sikufunako, so asezime lokho lekujajana ungazi ukuthi labanye bamfu bakholwa ngcono kunalabanye noma labanye bakholwa ingcono kunalabanye. So it's everyone's right. Ungathandaza wepha ungathandaza in a group. However, it's worth noting ukuthi whichever education facility, let's say it's a Baha'i school, it's a Christian school, labo laba maintainer leso skolo have a right ukuthi bafundzise umntwana their religion affiliated with that school. Protection of freedoms of expression, that's section 24. A person has a right of freedom of expression and opinion. A person shall not expect with the free consent of that person be hindered in the enjoyment of the freedom of expression, which includes the freedom of the press and other media, that is, freedom to hold opinions without interference, freedom to receive ideas and information without interference, freedom to communicate ideas and information without interference, whether the communication to be the public, general, or any person or class of persons, and freedom from interference with the correspondence of that person. 3. Nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this section to the extent that the law in question makes provision that is reasonably required in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health, that is reasonably required for the purpose of 1. Protecting the reputation, rights, and freedoms of other persons and the private lives of persons concerned in legal proceedings, preventing the disclosure of information received in confidence, maintaining the authority and the independence of the courts, or regulating the technical administration or the technical operation of telephony, telegraphy, post, wireless broadcasting, or television, or any other medium of communication, or that imposes reasonable restrictions upon public officers, except so far as that provision or as the case may be, the thing done under the authority of the law is shown not to be reasonable, justifiable in a democratic society. So this is another reason we have to be mindful, would say, as much as we have the freedom of expression, our freedom of expression shouldn't infringe on other people's rights, and especially with the media. Some people, they feel like because they are in the media, they can speak anyhow. forgetting ukuthi they have to observe other laws like the private of other persons and information given in confidence unless you fully explicitly gain consent to share information that you get from somebody. You do not have the right to then share it publicly, as we have seen recently, especially people that will call you and pretend to be somebody else in order to gain some information without your explicit consent. That is illegal. Anyway, we will continue to go to section 25. Protection of freedom of assembly and association. A person has a right to freedom of peacefully assembly and association. A person shall not, except with the free consent of that person, be hindered in the enjoyment of the freedom of peaceful assembly and association. That is to say, the right to assemble peacefully and associate freely with other persons for the promotion of protection of the interest of that person. Nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this section to the extent that the law in question makes provision. A. That is reasonable, required in the interest of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health. B. That is reasonably required for the purpose of protecting the rights and freedoms of other persons. Or C. That imposes reasonable restrictions upon public officers, except so far as that provision, or as the case may be, the thing done under the authority of that law is shown not to be reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. For without prejudice to the generally of subsection 2, nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of this section to the extent that the law in question makes provisions for the registration of trade unions, employers' organization, companies, partnerships, or cooperative societies, and other associations, including provision relating to the procedure for registration, prescribing qualifications for registration, and authorizing refusal of registration on the grounds that the prescribed qualifications are not fulfilled, or for prohibiting or restricting the performance of any function or the carry on of any business by any such association as is mentioned in paragraph A above, which is not registered. 5. A person shall not be compelled to join or belong to an association. Nako-ke bazalwane la sifike bese sibhidana khona, especially these days where people feel like we should join their movement or their idea of democracy ngengane, and if you speak against it or you do not support it, they feel like you should be silenced, violently silenced. Yet we have the freedom to choose which side we support, and it is legally for us to choose not to support whichever movement people are creating. And at the end of the day, whatever you decide in Empilo Yako, it's your choice, and nobody should actually force you to join or coerce you in any way. And that's why people nyalo bayamangala ukuthi how are they breaking the law. It's because people have been trying to shove this idea of their democracy and freedom in down our throat. And if you speak up against it to say, what, I don't want to be part of it, you are seen as an enemy or a threat of some sort, and then your life becomes threatened and all that. And it's uncalled for, and this is tarnishing even whatever people are trying to market to us. It actually makes us even hate it even more than we did before, because we are the Buddha will say, what sort of a lifestyle is this gonna be? We'll say, if you do not support a certain idea, people will then threaten your life, and make you go to ukwende ngengane. yet we are not supposed to, we are not forced. Nobody should be, compelled to join any movement. Phone. So anyway, I will continue with the next section after this, because I am conscious that I will run out of time if ngendalela enye section, and then it will end up being a long video.